All right, we're going to start with chapter one, The Rise of Hitler. In the other book, Never Again means never again. Chapter one, The Rise of Hitler. This book kicks off with World War I, dubbed, quote, the war to end all wars, unquote, due to the overwhelming and bloody destruction on multiple continents. History tells us that approximately 8.5 million soldiers and 13 million civilians died, and 20 million additional were wounded as a result. Armistice Day on November 11th, 1918 was supposed to bring world peace, but there were skeptics such as David Lloyd George, who was the first Earl Lloyd George of Dwifer, a British statesman who said, quote, "The Great War, like the next war, is a war to end war," unquote. I suppose the money making nature of war and the warmongering nature of mankind ensured there would be more bloodshed. Sure enough, along came Adolf Hitler of World War II notoriety. But first, he rose through the ranks and wrote his infamous Mein Kampf, an autobiographical manifesto which led to the insidious blame the Jews for our woes narrative that still plagues us today. Why discuss Mein Kampf, translated as my struggle? Because it still serves as a popular propaganda tool for anti Semites and hate groups ever since its publication in 1925, just 7 years after the end of the First World War. It describes Hitler's descent into anti Semitism and a warped belief system mixed with Nazi political ideology. Furthermore, it can't be stressed enough how much this book led to the rise of Hitler and the Nazis. We have the ability now to read this book in retrospect and see the enormous amount of lies and bullshit, yet it somehow still plays such a massive role in current anti Semitism, racism, and more. I took the time and read through Mein Shit, and I'm confident in saying it is unequaled in how bad it is. It's awful, boring, and inconsistent. Let me tell you, I couldn't wait to get to page two. I assure you that you would get much more enjoyment from reading a 700-page book written in Chinese. Obviously, I'm not here to endorse Mein Crap, but after reading it, I think you'll get a much better understanding of the rumor of why Hitler killed himself, because he was asked to proofread it. Anyway, it wasn't Hitler's anti Semitic and racist lies he constantly talked about. No, it's just a world class shitty book. I'd really, really like to meet and discuss this book with someone who liked it. Note reference to pages numbers of Mein Kampf in this book applies to a free download of the book found in, and you can find it on the back of the book. Oh, how the Jews haters adore Mein Kampf. I wonder if they realize that Hitler said, quote, "If you tell a big enough lie and tell it frequently enough, it will be believed," unquote. And that, in a nutshell, defines why Hitler became humanity's wrecking ball. The weak minded, the gullible, and those with low self esteem and low confidence believed his lies back then because they so badly wanted someone, anyone, to give them reasons to justify their woes. I know it sounds and seems shocking that his speeches and beliefs still resonate today, but unfortunately, there will always be someone looking and needing to blame others for their inadequacies and perceived inequalities. Dear neo Nazis, Hitler doesn't want you. The title of the first comment in chapter one. I'd like to point out that Hitler clearly states that Mein Kampf wasn't written for those outside of Germany, and I'll add Austria. Let me repeat that for those in the back of the classroom. Hitler's book does not apply to you, the American Aryans, at all. Aryans, true Aryans, are only inside the confines of Germany and Austria. Are you racially pure? There is a very, very small chance that you are. America is a big melting pot. So why do you, whom he considers worthless, demean yourselves by chasing after Hitler? Adolf Hitler stated, quote, "German Austria must be rejoined to the great German fatherland and not on the economic grounds," unquote. He also said, quote, "We do not want any other God than Germany itself. It is essential to have a fanatical faith and hope and love and in for Germany," end quote. And last but not least, Hitler said, quote, "I don't see much future for the Americans. In my view, it's a decayed country," end quote. He is talking to Germans only. He cared about Germans only, at least those who could carry forward his visions of a perfect, pure race. Oh, by the way, he fucking declared war on America. I would say that's the highest example I can give for his hatred of you and all Americans. His Aryan racist belief stopped at Germany and Austria's borders. Anyone born outside of Germany and Austria would not be invited to become a Nazi. How could you be invited when the quote Aryan blood unquote he's always babbling about is contained exclusively inside their borders? If Hitler knew there were people forming groups in the US and basing it off Nazis, Mein Kampf, his speeches, etc., he would have sued you. If you were the first hate group member from the US to meet Hitler in Germany, you would have been treated as an enemy of the state and summarily executed about 5 minutes after Goebbels finished ass fucking you. Therefore, if you're in the United States, Canada, England, Mexico, Guam, or wherever and cling to every word in Mein Kampf, please understand that your American ancestors who lived outside of the fatherland meant nothing to Hitler. Nothing. They were not his people. You were not his people. He cared nothing for outsiders, period. As he clearly states in Mein Germany crap, whatever that book shit was. Note that there are tons of sources that cover Hitler's formative years, and I encourage you to search online and in libraries to learn more. At the end of this book, I share resources that might be helpful to you also to find the truth. Below, we begin to delve into Hitler's youth, his narcissism, and his evolution as the world's most notorious psychotic, sociopathic, schizophrenic serial killer who ever headed up a country. Hitler's father, with whom he did not get along with, died when he was 13. Hitler was not a good student except for PE and dropped out of school at 16. He left for Vienna hoping to study painting but was rejected at an art academy. Then his mother died of cancer when he was 18, and no relatives were willing to step in. To encapsulate, basically, hate groups and neo Nazis are worshiping a rudderless teenage orphan. Yes, we know it's not his fault. Who pined for direction and attention. He became a failed painter on the streets of Vienna while attempting to sell his paintings for income, and he lived a bohemian lifestyle in homeless shelters and men's dormitories. He was incredulous about his lack of funds when the obvious response was, quote, yeah, you're selling fucking paintings on the streets, unquote. Nobody bought those paintings back then or now, especially his finger paintings. In my opinion, this primed him for the indoctrination and someone to blame for his shitty life. Also, at this time, he started attending various political meetings that were already anti Semitic, and slowly he became interested in politics. He just had to find something, anything, to justify why he wasn't succeeding or blame whoever was holding him back from greatness. So, from his current situation, he decided to sign up for the German military. After joining the 16th Bavarian Reserve Infantry Regiment, he fought on the Western Front and was awarded the Iron Cross for his bravery in battle. Blinded for a short while from a gas attack, he was removed from the war effort and was upset. And by upset, I mean he was like psychotic about it when Germany lost World War I. He hated the Weimar government for signing the Versailles Treaty, which, quote, supposedly financially crippled Germany through demands for war reparations and sanctions, and yearned for the days of the Kaiser. After the war, Hitler worked for the German army as a teacher and he was a snitch, informer. The reason he attended the beer hall initially was to spy on the German Workers' Party. Soon after, he became involved in politics, giving speeches, and writing his horseshit agenda about removing the Jews, blah, blah, blah. Party leader Anton Drexler tasked him with shaping political ideology and propaganda. In 1920, the party renamed itself the National Socialist Workers' Party, the Nazis, and rolled out its 25-point program. In 1921, Hitler led the party and began spewing his speeches. I'm not sure why his manner of speech was so popular. Have you ever seen him at the podium? They used to hand out rain gear to everyone in the first two rows of Hitler's speeches to protect them from the massive amount of spit from Hitler's mouth. However, when Hitler got on a roll, the third row was fucked. Nevertheless, he stirred up a nationalist frenzy. Soon, everyone was talking about this, quote, rising star, unquote. And to protect himself from the objecting views, he launched the stormtroopers, the SA. Despite their protection, the SA was too small at the time and put up a real fight. He was put in prison in March of 1924 for failing to overthrow the Bavarian government. Notice the word failing. Ultimately, sooner or later, Hitler failed at everything he did. What came of his incarceration? He wrote Mein Kampf, published in 1925 after his release. Fortunately for Hitler, the Great Depression hit, which he exploited to bolster the Nazi Party. It worked. Germans were unhappy with the economic downturn and scarcity of food. By 1932, the Nazis were the largest party in the Reichstag, promising solutions for everyone's woes. However, the Communist Party and other factions prevented the Nazi Party from being a majority. Still, by January 30th, 1933, Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany under President Hindenburg. A month later, arson struck the Reichstag building, which is the German Parliament building, and was blamed on the communists. It was the Nazis who started the fire. Hitler banned the Communist Party in Germany, and voila, now the Nazis were the majority. A month later, he was able to concoct one of the most personal political coups in modern history through the passage of the Enabling Act, empowering him to make laws without the consent of the Reichstag. Thus, the doors to dictatorship were open. He became the architect of the Holocaust and quickly found a group of pussies who would enforce his dictatorial decrees from 1933 to 1945 to purify a master race. Hitler claimed that Jewish people plotted to weaken Germany and scapegoated them for everything from causing poverty to killing Jesus to dirtying humanity's gene pool. It was always the Jews. I think part of the reason an animosity towards Jews is in part due to Hitler, Himmler, Goebbels, and Goering having very, very small dicks. Rumor has it they all attended a few bris ceremonies together out of curiosity, and when they saw that their cocks were smaller than those babies, well, they were outraged. The Jews and an untold number of innocent people suffered persecution and unprecedented brutality simply due to their DNA, ethnicity, color, sexual orientation, and religious beliefs. Ultimately, the Jews were dubbed an inferior race that had to be exterminated before they dominated the globe. Beatings, starvation, tortures, and death by gassing became the largest saga of mass murder and genocide the world had ever seen. How quickly the misinformation smear campaign escalated into persecution and then to camps and then to the ovens. Hitler banned trade unions and all opposing political parties and withdrew Germany from the League of Nations. He pounced on President Hindenburg's death in August 1934 to combine the titles of Chancellor and President and make himself the Fuhrer of Germany. Now he began building the Third Reich arsenal of manpower and weapons and tossed the Treaty of Versailles out the door. The Nuremberg race laws were passed in 1935, the Reich citizenship law and protection of German blood and German honor law, and now the quest for a pure Aryan German citizenry began in earnest. Where did this leave the Jews? Well, they couldn't hold public office because they weren't Aryan. That was the first sanction against them, quickly followed by the loss of businesses before the Nazis eventually took all Jewish properties away. Then, in March 1936, Hitler reoccupied the Rhineland, which had been taken from Germany by the Versailles Treaty. Britain and France allowed it to happen without any force. Then the Auschwitz-Auschwitz began in the spring of 1938 to annex the federal state of Austria into the German Reich, followed by the reclaiming of the Sudetenland area of Czechoslovakia. There was absolutely no opposition to Germany in either land or its money grab. The Munich Agreement was supposed to prevent Hitler from making further territorial inroads, but did he honor it? Fuck no. In March 1939, he invaded and occupied Czechoslovakia. He did the same with Poland on September 1st, 1939, which led to the outbreak of World War II. You may realize by now how much of a psychotic, narcissistic, evil fuck Hitler truly was, but he must have had some sort of fetish about signing agreements and pacts that he didn't honor and had no plans to ever honor. Frankly, it's just weird to me. Were his ruses just a short-lived appeasement boner? Operation Barbarossa. Why did Hitler do it? I mean, why did the head of all military in Germany do it? Because he was a narcissistic, egomaniac fucking idiot. You really don't need to read more into it than that. The Soviets were caught off guard because of their agreement with Germany. Initially, it was horrific for the Russians. But what came out of it was the world was able to witness how highly impressive the courage, strength, and toughness the Russians displayed. I will always be indebted to Russia in the sense of how they liberated the concentration camps they entered. Firstly, they liberated a bunch of camps. And secondly, in some of the camps, the Russian soldiers gave Jews weapons and allowed them to go after the guards. Thanks, Russia. Anyway, there are basically two reasons Germany could take so much land so quickly. Germany had a 3 to 5 year head start on every other country in the world militarily as they circumvented the Treaty of Versailles provision to enhance their military. And outside of Japan, no other country was doing any sizable rearmament. In the 1920s, German companies generated 40% of the world's market of morphine and 80% of the world's cocaine, which allowed German soldiers a lot less time for sleep or issues of readiness. Pervitin and amphetamines were given out in chocolate form to all German military troops that were fighting. The Nazis started distributing Pervitin to their soldiers in late 1938. They rolled it out for the first time in decent-sized quantities in the invasion of Poland in 1939. In Poland, they saw some benefits. Between April and July 1940, German servicemen received 35 million methamphetamine tablets. Let me show you a quick example of a lie. Okay, you ready? Hitler and all the Nazis preached purity and self-discipline and were not allowed to take any drugs, as it's one of the backbones of being an Aryan. Yes, I'm shocked too. To add to the tough and relentless reputation of the Russians, I present Stalingrad. Facing an overwhelmingly coked-up massive military, the Russians never considered surrendering. It would have been easy to justify their victory in Stalingrad by saying that they just continued to send manpower. However, the Russians' troops came in staggered waves until Germany could take no more. No one would have blamed the Russians for surrendering early on in Stalingrad, but fortunately, they never even considered it. Had the Nazis taken Stalingrad, the outcome of the war would have been different. I think the Allies would still win, but at what cost? We'll cover World War II in greater detail ahead, but for now, I showcase the stark contraction between the evil Jews and the Jews who were accused of perpetrating versus what they actually accomplished on behalf of humanity. Thank you.